So welcome to this discussion. We shall be analyzing civil litigation workshop. And please, in case you want a serious discussion group, then you can text us on 0756767 where we are discussing past papers and also going through workshop. So please don't miss this opportunity. We only have 3 slots left. So in case you want a serious discussion group, then you can reach us to us. But having said that, let us go to civil litigation workshop. During this week, students will be exposed to knowledge and skills required in the protection of the democratic rights exercisable through electoral process, protection of citizens' rights against arbitrary and irregular exercise of public powers, the discretionary remedy of judicial review, and constitutional interpretation. So basically, this week looks at judicial review, constitutional interpretation, as well as election petitions. So by the end of this week, students will be able to appreciate electoral laws, develop ability to advise on election remedies, scope and grounds for judicial review, cause of action, among others. Remedies on election grievances, we have enforcement of fundamental human rights and freedoms, judicial review, a writ of habeas corpus, and constitutional interpretation. Workshop 1. The workshop is on the people's democratic rights to elect leaders of their choice and the leaders' right to contest for elective positions under the law, such as the member of parliament. The aims of the workshops are to 1. Broaden the students' understanding on the laws and procedure governing parliamentary and local government elections, and develop students' ability to advise and handle dispute and electoral matters. By the end of this workshop, students will be able to examine the concepts and principles relating to parliamentary elections, petitions and vote recounting, identify and weigh grounds on which pre-election and post-election remedies can be available to aggrieved parties, and draft the relevant documents. So the facts of the workshop: assume you are an advocate of Miss Mwanja and company advocates. Tracy Jacob and Bobby Johnson has phoned you today and narrated the facts below. Assume that on the 30th of July 2025, the Electoral Commission conducted parliamentary elections across the country for Uganda County East constituency in Bushenyi district. The election attracted 3 candidates. These were Tracy Jacob, sponsored by the NRM. Then we had Benda Samson, sponsored by FDC, and Johnson, who was independent. Upon tallying the results, the returning officer Basude Fred declared Benda Samson, sponsored by Forum for Democratic Change, who scored 21,568 votes, as the elected member of parliament for Igara County constituency. In Bushenyi district, he was followed by Tracy Job, who scored 21,462 votes, and Bobson Johnson, who scored 2,282 votes. Upon declaration, Ben Samson, sponsored by FDC, as a successful candidate, the Electoral Commission gazetted his name on 25th of September 2025 in the Uganda Gazette. The candidate was duly sworn in and took his seat in the parliament. Tracy Jacob who scored 21,562 votes, and Bobby Johnson, who scored 228 votes, are before you. In light of the foregoing, Tracy Jacob and Bobby Johnson have further informed you that Benson was nominated on 20th June with qualification in the names of Mungatha Ben Samson, having obtained O-level by UNEB in those names, but later did see certificates in plumbing, electro and engineering, structural design, respectively, under the names of Samson Muganza. So basically, here we shall look at how do you swear an affidavit in case you want to change names. Remember, if you have to change names, then you have to swear a deed poll. But then if you are just adding a name, you only need a statutory declaration. And then paragraph 2, these certificates qualifications were duly equated by National Council for Higher Education at A level, and he hold the certificate from Nche. But when Tracy Jacob contacted Bunji Famous, the Secretary of UNEB was informed that UNEB has never been approached by Nche in respect of those qualifications. So basically, we shall look at the role of UNEB and National Council for Higher Education, and which basically satisfies After nomination, Benda Samson was conducting the whole of his campaign using a double cabin pickup registration number belonging to Ministry of Finance. We shall look at not using public resources. You cannot use offices of the government to conduct an election campaign. Of course, contrary to the Elections Petitions Act. The returning officer failed to, in connivance with Benda Samson, appointed supporters of Benda Samson as presiding officers in several polling stations. These included Wentuha. Then Bobby Johnson informs you that he was informed by his campaign agent in Chile that the FDC candidate sent money to voters. That is voter bribery contrary to the Election Petitions Act. Tracy Jacob further informs you that at one of the polling stations, Wentuha Primary School, which has the highest number of registered voters in Ngara County, Benda's agent caused havoc in the middle of vote counting. At the time, the NRM candidate was already having 70 votes counted, as opposed to the FDC candidate who only had 88 votes. When the presiding officer was remaining with about 10 votes to count, the process was disrupted. So basically, here we shall look at the process of the role of the Electoral Commission. In another polling station called Rumchuch Primary School polling station, Tracy Jacob informs you that the results of that station are very suspect. Informs that his agent Ogona informed him that the FDC polling agent, in connivance with the presiding officer, powered already ticked votes. So that's voter staffing, contrary to the Election Petitions Act. Tracy further informs you that at the said polling station above mentioned, the voters stated to have voted for female member of parliament and the president less than 260 votes than the votes cast for the contested election. Bobby Johnson informs you that at the time of nomination, he chose the symbol of a fist, and on the ballot paper he was given a symbol of a handshake. So basically, you look at the rights to choose the party flags, also provided for under Election Petitions Act. Tasks advised Tracy and Bob Johnson on the propriety of Benda Samson's nomination by the Electoral Commission. What protection remedies would you pursue in the circumstances? So basically here, understand that under the Constitution, right, together with the Parliamentary Elections Act, for you to be nominated, you must have an equivalent of senior 6. So basically, we shall see whether this person had those equivalent, and then we can advise whether he was properly nominated or not. What election remedies would you have? We have now you can lodge an objection with the Electoral Commission at that stage. In the Electoral Commission and successful candidates' actions and omissions and their effect on the proper conduct of the elections. So basically, we shall look at voter bribery. We shall look at where the election was free and fair. We shall look at nomination, the party flag which was given because this person wanted a fist and was given a symbol. We shall look at also how did they conduct themselves on counting. So we shall basically be discussing the role of the Electoral Commission. Assuming Jacob and Bobby came to your chambers immediately after the election and before Benda Samson was gazetted by Electoral Commission, advise them on the necessary course of action you would take and the necessary documents you would file in court. So basically here we have a vote recount from the Chief Magistrate. You can go for vote recounting from the Chief Magistrate before the gazetting as one of the remedies, or maybe write to the Electoral Commission. The name is available to Tracy Jacob after Benda Samson was gazetted. This is a petition. I will have to proceed by a petition and an affidavit challenging the election outcome. Any additional messages you would need basically on whether you can get additional evidence from the agents, both the necessary documents, petition and affidavit. Assuming we are representing Benda Samson, what steps would you take to protect this seat upon receipt of the service of process? There would go for an answer to the petition. Assume that after both parties had filed their respective pleadings, their petition has approached you that intends to withdraw his petition from court. Advise him. Basically, I shall look at the process of how do you withdraw an election petition. So that will be what we shall be looking at as far as workshop 1 is concerned. But also remember that in an election petition, if you read the case of Chiza vs. Javas YKM7, Win Masco vs. Win Babhuga, you must prove that the result, or there was the results affected the election in a substantial manner. which basically meaning that that the election, the irregularities affected the outcome of the election in a substantial manner. Workshop 2. The workshop will expose students on how to obtain remedies in wrongs committed under the exercise of public powers, as well as application for principles governing constitutional interpretation. The workshop aims at broadening students' knowledge on the laws and procedures for judicial review, develop students' ability to handle disputes in their areas of practice. By the end of the workshop, students should be able to 1. Examine the various concepts of and building relating enforcement of fundamental rights, identify human rights violation, cause of action, among others. Part A, assuming you are still an advocate in private practice, Ms. Muwanga and company advocates. She's not happy with what is going through. She starts seeking for legal advice and remedies. She has narrated to you the following facts. 1. She's a registered midwife who has been practicing for the last 10 years. She has been employed by Mulago Hospital for the last 4 years. She has been having disagreements with her immediate boss, who has been making sexual advances to her. She supported the matter. She's reported the matter to the hospital deputy director. Recently, she was suspended from her job on fabricated charges of absenteeism and professional misconduct arising from a complaint from one of the patients who was in Marago private wing. Her practicing license expired at the end of July 25. She applied to the Nurse and Midwives Council in early August for renewal of her practicing certificate. On December, she received a letter from the council rejecting her application for renewal on the basis of professional misconduct at her workplace. She wrote to the chairperson of the council, Ms. Gertrude, complaining about the above situation, but did not receive any response. She recently met Gertrude at the Garden City doing her shopping. She informed her to first sort out her issues with Marago Hospital. She asked her to go and apologize to Dr. Mwanse. Mildred is helpless since this has been her only source of income. She recently could not afford to pay school fees for her 14-year-old daughter due to SID. Advise Mildred on propriety of the decision by the nurse, remedies available, procedure and documents, and draft. So basically, I shall be looking at judicial review. I understand that under judicial review have been discussed in several cases: Person Waga versus LDC, Virondemo versus LDC, Professor Omoro versus Chambogo University, whereby you must prove illegality, procedure impropriety, or maybe rationality, and you can acquire certiorari, prohibition, or maybe that order can be quashed. The procedure from unnecessary documents is a notice of motion supported by an affidavit, drafted documents which are drafted notice of motion, and an affidavit in support for judicial review. Then from there we shall look at Part B. From there we shall look at Part B. Part B, we have assuming as still an advocate in practice. Just of recent, the Parliament of Uganda passed the Uganda Armed Forces Amendment Bill, which was later signed by the President. The said amendment imposes that there should be a unit court-martial each unit of the armed forces. He further tells you that a recent chairperson of the General Court-Martial passed the guidelines known as the Constitutional Bail Guidelines. He tells you that this is among the 20 the guidelines. He tells you that this is among the 20 UPAN supporters who were arrested. The Constitutional Bail Guidelines issued by the chairperson of the General Court-Martial contravenes or are inconsistent with the Constitution, already sits in place and is before you for advice, his rights, and cause of action. So basically, the cause of action in this matter has been discussed in Tinye Fuza versus Anthony General and section Article 50 and Article 137. Whoever thinks that anything contravenes the Constitution, he can go to basically the Constitutional Court. So his rights are cause of actions, the procedure, form, and documents. This basically would be a petition. This basically is going to be a petition for violation of human rights. The principles applicable to such actions, the nature of evidence, and the powers of court in the circumstances. If you deem court inevitable draft the relevant documents, you would need to file the circumstances and the conditions for their appropriate filing. Subsequent filing and serving on the documents into above, the wife of Mr. comes to your chambers and informs you that her husband unfortunately passed on suddenly last week. However, despite the unfortunate circumstances, she determined to pursue the matter in court. Would you advise under task 1A still be the same, and what are the ESCO consideration? So basically here what we shall be doing in part B is because we have this, if I tell you that the recent chairperson of the court martial passed the guidelines known as the constitutional bail guidelines, practice directions. So we shall be challenging these directions, the constitutionality of these directions. He tells that he is among the 20 UPAN supporters who were arrested, charged, and currently being detained on allegations that they were found dressed in red berets and shoes that are monopoly of Uganda Armed Forces. He's yet to file his application for bail, but he's unhappy and thinks that the constitutional guidelines issued by the chairperson of the General Court Martial contravenes or are inconsistent with the Constitution already sets in place, and he's before you for a remedy. So basically his remedy is about the guidelines, and that's why you can go for what? For that basically. So basically that is it for this discussion. And in case you want a serious discussion group which will take you how to answer past papers and also give you the confidence on how not to misfire, please reach us on 0756767 You can WhatsApp us on that number. Then we shall be in position to reach to you. If you can afford to pay a monthly subscription fee, please wish you success.